Welcome back to my channel, everybody. I was rummaging in the shed this week looking for some thrift flips. So I found some treasure in the shed, also a couple of spiders, and I flipped a few things that Lord knows how long they've just been sitting in the shed for. I've got 3 projects. I'm gonna get straight into it. Here's the first one. Also, be careful, I'm using power tools in most of these projects. Be extra careful, wear your protection. You don't want to end up in hospital. They have enough going on with everything else than you going in with an injury, so be careful. First up on the list is this old table, and don't worry, although it may look like it's mahogany, it's actually like an imitation. It's like a veneer and it's like a mahogany stained colour, but it's actually chipboard inside. It's not an expensive mahogany Rossmore piece at all. It is an imitation, and I'm going to chop it up into 2 shelves for my garden. I simply measured the center. My jigsaw the blade was not long enough to start the cut, so I had to use my handsaw to start, and then I was able to get my jigsaw in the cut and then chop it in half. I also had to finish with my handsaw at the end as well. Once I had my 2 pieces separated, they looked kind of like shelves. So I wanted to sand them, and you'll also see the edges now. I'll show you that inside is like chipboard and I had to seal it. So I wanted to sand it down because there was lots of spiders, bugs, dirt, grime, Lord knows what was in my shed. And also, as this is like a veneer and not real wood, I wanted to like key it with gently sanding it so my paint would have something to grip to. I hope you have your sun cream on, Blendy. She's helping. Or is she looking at the birds? Also, I just want to show you that this is not like a valuable piece. It's like a coated chipboard to make it look like mahogany. It's not a mahogany wood. I'm gonna have to seal this because if water gets at this, it can warp it and expand. So I'm gonna clean this, prime it, and then look at sealing this. I know it's gonna be at the back, and it is gonna be outside, so I'm not expecting it to, I am expecting some damage, but I want to get as long as I can out of it. So I'm going to give these a good clean. I then just cleaned it down to remove any old dirt, grime and cobwebs with my trusty old crud cutter. Once I was happy that my piece was clean, I then gave it a coat of primer and I gave it 2 coats of some leftover paint. This paint was actually left over from my paneling video where I panelled the bedroom. It's aged vellum by Colour Trend, and their satin wood, actually it's an eggshell. It can be used outdoors as well, but just check the tins of paint that you have in your shed and just use what you have, because I know it's quite hard to get your hands on paint at the moment. To drill into concrete, you're going to make sure that you have a drill that has a hammer function. It's really important that you have the hammer function so that you can drill into concrete. Using a masonry drill bit, I drilled in 2 holes that I had measured out and checked with a spirit level. Once I had drilled the holes and they were deep enough, I inserted a wall plug. I then got my bracket and I screwed in my bracket to the wall plugs, and it was good and solid. So the key thing for this is you need a hammer function if you want to drill into concrete, and you're going to need some masonry drill bits. Also be extra careful and make sure you wear some protective eyewear. You can also wear gloves, but when I wear gloves, they're actually too big and they're actually more of a hindrance because I don't have good enough grip. Once you are happy that your shelves are up, just give them a little test and test the weight. I'm only going to be popping some pots, but pots can get heavy, especially when they get wet, so just bear that in mind. So next up we have this adorable, it's like a cabinet shaped old jewellery box. There is no markings on this box. There is actually a wind up song, is that what you would call it, on the back, and some really pretty coloured felt inside, which I wanted to keep. But I couldn't find any brand names or stamps on this, so I think it's a replica. Also, some of the front pieces seem to be like a veneer as well. I gave this piece a good clean down before I tackled it. I popped on some primer because I wasn't sure of the finish of the wood. So I just popped on some primer, and then using the same colour paint, I popped that on. I gave it 2 coats. I love the contrast of the yellow and the slightly green tone paint. You'll also notice that I didn't paint the sides. This is because they get stuck. So I just painted the front of the drawers. I do this the same with furniture because it tends to get stuck when you try and open them on the sides. I actually decided to make some clay moldings for this jewellery box, but I ended up not using them because they were just a bit too much. But I still thought I would share the technique because it's a great way of adding to a piece of furniture without spending a lot. Using some air dry clay and a mould, I simply took the clay out of the packet, warmed it up in my hands, and I pushed it into the moulds, and I wiped away the excess on the back. Try and keep the back as smooth as you can. When they are slightly wet, so this takes about 24 hours, slightly longer for me to dry. I'm not sure if it was because it was slightly cold. When they are still slightly wet, I actually take them out of the mould, and then I can kind of smooth out any rough edges. So as I'm taking them out now, they've only been in the mould for like an hour, but they have their shape, and I can smooth out any rough edges, and then I just let them dry until they're rock solid. You can get loads of mouldings off Amazon. You can use cake mouldings. Obviously, if you use any food mouldings with clay, don't then use them in food. Keep them for one or the other. As you can see, I assembled them on top, but I just thought it was way too fussy, and I ended up just keeping the bow, and I painted it gold and popped it on the front. To bring back the gold detailing, I used some of this Rub and Buff, and I actually applied it with an old concealer brush, and this just brings out the details. I also popped some gold detailing around the trim of this box because I love the kind of, it reminds me of like a Parisian, like when you go to them old houses, they would have their paneling in that lovely colour and like gold detailings. I thought it was very Escape to the Chateau feeling. I had this old teacup that I think I got in a charity shop or I was gifted it. Anyway, I don't have a full set and I thought it would be cute to drill it into a cake stand, but I'm actually going to put it into the garden on my shelf or in the flower bed where it's not going to fall over, and have it as a teacup bird feeder. So the trick for this is you need to have a tile and ceramic drill bit, and you also need to keep it cool. So I measured out the center of my plate and I just marked it with a pencil line in the middle, and you can just double check your measurements, measure twice, drill once. I just place a piece of wood underneath because I obviously don't want to drill into my countertop. You need to make sure you keep your drill bit cool, which is why I am dipping the tip in some water. You're gonna go slow with this one. This is not as quick as drilling into wood. It'll take you probably 20 minutes to drill into all of your china pieces to make this, but it's still a quick enough DIY. When you get to the end, you just have to be careful that your plate doesn't kind of heat up and shatter, so just make sure you keep the plate and the drill bit cool. Once you drill into all of your pieces, your cup and your saucer and your plate, you can then assemble it. I got this cake stand kit. I got a bunch of them off Amazon like last year. Some of you might remember when I made the teacup clock, and they're really easy to kind of assemble. Give it a clean and there you go. And you can pop it into the garden if you want to make a cute bird feeder as well. That's what has been keeping me busy this week. Love the table chopped in half because I've seen that done so many times, but I actually finally got around to doing it for myself. Got that table from my neighbour probably like 3-4 years ago, possibly more, and it was in the shed and I had to use the rake to pull it out because spiders. My shed is full of spiders. My shed would make for an amazing upcycle flip, like tidy my shed video, but I'm too terrified of the spiders because it's full of them. But I love how that shelf gives like an Alice in Wonderland kind of theme. If you've seen my other garden kind of DIY videos from the past few weeks, that little area that I have has slowly just come along naturally, just from refreshing the bits of furniture and things. I don't know what we're going to do when we go back to normal. I won't have time to do my garden. So my question to you is, are you going to rummage in your shed? What treasure do you have in your shed? Do you suffer from the shed spiders too? And are you afraid of them? I know that it's harder to get your hands on supplies like paint and wood and things like that, so I just encourage you to use whatever you already have. A lot of the things that I've done in the past few videos, I've used like old scrap bits of paint that I've had left over. You'll be surprised how much you'll get from the dribble at the end of a tin of paint. There's generally more in it than you realise, so just use whatever you already have. Use your scraps. Get the projects that you've been putting off out of the shed. You don't have to be buying lots of new items or new equipment or tools. Just use what you have, and be careful if you are going to be using power tools, because hospitals, they have enough on their hands without us DIY folk coming in with injuries. So make sure wear your goggles, gloves if you need them. Just put the safety gear on. So that's me for this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheeky thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.